Can spirits make items appear out of thin air? Is there any way to guarantee that you experience a paranormal phenomenon? What is arguably one of the most prolific hauntings in the UK? Today, we test the believability of Pete the Poltergeist.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
where we dive into the unknown and the unusual
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
That is right. Happy Tuesday, y'all. I hope you're having a great week. We are a fourth of the way through, basically, of 2024, and that is wild.
That's pretty crazy, honestly. I don't like to think about time that way.
It's the interesting thing about podcasts. I was telling someone about this, and it's a very small flex, but I'm still going to do it. Between this and another project, we have recorded something every week since July of 2019.
That's pretty crazy.
Every single week since 2019, something exists. So we can literally go back. You know, like that's what we can pass on to our grandchildren, right?
It's like, I don't want it.
Well, just listen to it. You want to know what life was like in Ohio?
Honestly.
You don't want to know what grandpa was up to?
The beginning and ends are very good documentaries of what life was like for us.
It's like we're creating our own auditory journal for us because it's based on topics, but
yeah,
it's crazy. It's just crazy to think that before you know it, 2025 is here. But
I don't want to think about it.
That has nothing to do with this topic. This topic takes place in the 80s. Sources include Higgy Pop, Mysterious Universe, and Spooky Isles.
Hardcore mullets.
So let me preface this a little bit. And I normally don't do this for expectations because what somebody finds creepy, another person might not. What somebody finds interesting, another person might not. But I feel like this is pretty safe to say. I do not find this to be a particularly scary, creepy topic. Okay. You and I normally, it's rare where we really lean into it, like with like a Zozo. It's normally like the topic. The topic lends to us leaning into it more. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like for instance, I know based on what we've heard from listeners, some people are like, I don't like listening to your podcast at night.
Yeah.
I don't like listening to it late at night in bed or, before going to bed or something like that. This one, you don't gotta worry about. If you're someone who likes listening to podcasts at night, we got you.
It's midnight, you're fine.
I put this akin to like the flannel man, where it's like, yeah, the overarching idea of what is happening could be classified as creepy.
Okay.
But you're not gonna be scared.
Okay. I got you.
But let me throw this at you as well. If you are a skeptic of the paranormal, which welcome, I lean a little, a little. If you know, you know. This one's going to be really hard. If you believe these stories to be true, it is going to be really hard to come away from this episode and be like, yeah, there's nothing paranormal in this world.
That's an interesting take. Not really scary, but also could be very much paranormal.
Very, very much paranormal. So let's get into it. So this is reported as one of the most popular and unexplainable poltergeist encounters in the UK.
I've never heard of this.
So, okay. And you know more about poltergeist than I do, and we've had every time it comes up in an episode, we turn into what's a ghost versus a poltergeist?
Yeah,
and we've kind of hit that over the head a couple times. Mm-hmm. But I want you to think about this.
All right.
At the end, I'm giving you the study guide, the cheat sheet.
Say this is the study guide.
This is the study guide for the discussion at the end of the episode. Do you think this is a poltergeist or is this a haunting? That's what I want you to think about.
Okay.
Because I was thinking about it, and I normally don't. So if I'm even thinking about it, that means it's worth discussing. So the story takes place in Cardiff, Wales in the 1980s. It involves a gentleman named John Matthews who owned a lawnmower repair center very creatively titled Mower Services.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
I nailed it right on the head.
I joke, but the CEO of that, but the SEO of that name is really, really good. But that's 25 years before that matters. I feel like back then you'd make it ABC Mower Services for the phone book.
You can make it something silly.
But there's no confusion about what's getting done in the shop.
Wacky blades, wreck 'em ups. I don't know.
So their business comprised of a workshop and a small yard set in the Cateys area of Cardiff, and their connecting garden accessory shop open out to the street. So they sell the accessories and they fix your shit.
So he's like the Hank Hill of grass.
He just stands outside drinking a beer, waiting for you to come in.
Hey.
You got along, except...
Probably a warm beer because he's in England, which is messed up.
Go a lawnmower problem. Oh, I fixed up right quick.
Give it a jiffy.
Just bring the whole lot. We'll fix him down over here. I think that's Australian. Yeah, cut that too. God damn it.
Oh, I'm not cutting that.
I'll cut it. I listen to these before they go out, motherfucker. You just wait. The one before that was good, though. So anyway, John never had any issues, hauntings, strange occurrences at this place of business until one random afternoon. So John, his brother-in-law, Fred, who also worked there, and his friend Ian, who also works there,
sure,
were working on a mower. In the midst of the repair, the men heard a loud bang, which they claimed sounded like a rock hitting the metal roof of the garage. They paused for a minute, kind of looked at each other, wondering what that was. And a few minutes later, they heard another bang, and then another one. So John started growing frustrated. He was thinking that maybe there were some kids outside that were messing around, vandalizing the property. So he ran outside to see them, figure out what was going on, and get to the bottom of it. But when he got out there, he was surprised to see there was no one there. There were no kids fooling around, nothing. The street was quiet and empty, and eerily quiet, especially after hearing all the banging. So naturally, he just thought this whole thing was odd, but, because he didn't see the kids running away. It was a pretty open area, so he was thinking, I just heard this noise, so even if I couldn't catch them, I'd still see them leaving, scattering away. But he didn't, so he's like, all right, they got lucky, I just missed them, whatever. And he figured that would be the last moment that he'd be thinking about this whole mess.
Yeah.
But it was just the beginning of much more stranger events.
He was like, oi, what in the Queen's going on out here?
Quit throwing your stones, will you? So the next day, Ian was in the workshop when he noticed some spanners. I
think that's like a wrench.
It is a wrench.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you because I wrote in here that I had to look it up.
Yeah, I think I did know that.
It's a wrench. It's
Which
British.
Is silly. I don't know. You just call it a
just call it a wrench, man. Come on.
Yeah.
What the hell? So anyway, he looks up and he sees this spanner.
Yeah.
Starts swinging. This wrench, it's swinging. Swinging. And he's like, I'm loaded here. No one else has come by. And there's no wind inside the shop. They got everything closed. So regardless, it's strange. He knows it's strange, but Ian reaches over and just stops it from swinging. And, he kind of shook it off. He's like, all right, whatever. I got lawnmower. I got blades to fix.
Yeah.
So he continues working. And only a few moments later, the spanner begins swinging again, more intensely. And then more of them start swinging.
Oh, no. That's actually kind of creepy.
Yeah. So he's shocked. Like, this makes no sense to him. Because now it's not even wind. Like, wind or they would either make them swing and sink.
Yeah.
Like, it would just be like one breeze, but also, like, wrenches aren't like, and there's little wrenches, little spanners that might be, like, I feel like if you got a heavy wrench, unless it's like torrential, winds, I don't think it's just going to start swinging.
It's not a super easy thing to make swing.
And if the way that it's described, it's more like if you pulled it back and then you let go and it kind of did that rocking motion. So he's looking at this and he's like, what is going on? And then a few seconds later, a wrench flies off the shelf completely on its own. And as he turns to watch this wrench fly, catapult itself away, he's hit in the chest with something, not a wrench.
No. Okay.
No, he's not. He's still alive.
Jeez.
He's alive, tell the tale. But he didn't know what it was. And he heard a little noise. And he looked down and he sees at his feet, there's this little stone, this little rock.
Okay.
And he's not sure how to react. He's anxious. He's freaked out, frustrated, right? Because it's like, well, these things are swinging. One just flew off and I just got hit in the chest with something. So I think in like a moment of like desperation, not knowing what to do, frustrated with like, what the hell is going on? He takes the rock off the ground and just chucks it into the corner of the repair shop.
Okay.
And what happened next is the last thing he would expect. The stone came hurling back toward him.
Oh, no.
Seemingly from nowhere.
Oh, no.
And this became a thing. He threw the rock.
Yeah.
It came back. He threw the rock. It came back. It's like
he keeps doing it.
It's like a baseball game where you go out and you start warming up.
Yeah.
You gotta warm and you get farther and farther away. But he's just chucking this thing. So eventually, I would assume by like the 6th or 7th throw, the consistency of it is amazing. But he's like, I gotta tell someone, I gotta show someone. You need a witness, It'd be like if you saw a UFO for a second, you're like, damn, I wish someone else would have saw it.
Yeah.
If it's floating there, you're FaceTiming, you're calling someone, you're shouting. You need someone else to witness paranormal events with you.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I got to call for John. I got to let him know what's happening. And and he was there physically. Like, he didn't call him. He like, hey, John, John, get in here. You don't believe it.
It took him that long to call for him?
I made up 7. It was a back and forth process for a while before he realized I needed to get someone else in here.
Gotcha.
So here's a quote from John. Quote, "One day, Ian called me in, and he was standing at the bench, and something hit him in the chest, if I remember right, and it dropped on the floor. He picked it up and threw it back into one of the corners of the room. And immediately, a rock of some sort, I think it was the same thing, came straight back at him and hit him behind his head. So he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he picked up another rock, and he just threw it back again, and instantly, it came back. And this became a regular. He played with it then for 10, 15 minutes." Unquote. Pretty wild, right?
Yeah. But also, they're giving it energy.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, they're giving it a lot of energy.
Every time they throw it, it has to throw it back. It's just like stretching the muscles. It's like, all right, let's keep going.
Yeah. I know they're not scared of this story, so I don't think anything too terrible is going to happen after this, but
they all die. And then the shop caught on fire. Yep.
Oh.
I wonder how hard this rock is getting thrown at you. Because there's a difference between like, hey, toss me a pen.
Yeah.
Versus like, you know, you're angry at someone, you're throwing dishes like The Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Like, I wonder what the intensity of this rock being thrown at him is.
And
like.
if he got hit in the back of the head with the stone, probably wasn't that hard.
Mm-hmm. So now we got banging.
Yeah.
We got wrenches, spanners, swinging, and stones being thrown in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So because this all happened, not at once, but within that short period of time, John wondered if the activity could just be the result of a staff member pranking him. Someone's messed with me in my own business. So one evening, after hours, he conducted a test. Hopefully they were getting paid overtime for this. They went through the shop, locked all the doors, and everybody placed their hands on the counter so that all the hands were accounted for. Obviously, no one's throwing things when you got your hands like that.
Right.
And they're just waiting around. Thankfully, they weren't waiting that long, though, because even in this state of everyone having their hands put down, looking at each other, accounting for everyone, they still heard the sound of stones flying around the shop.
Really?
So in that moment, that's a switch. John's like, okay, it's not y'all. You guys are not the ones doing this to me.
You're not the spy.
Yeah, you guys can keep your jobs. Actually, Timmy, we have to let you go. I wasn't going to tell you today under these circumstances, but...
Go, Tim. Oh, sucks to be Tim.
So you hire the ghost? No, we just really don't like you.
Yeah, well, you have to pay the ghost. So.
You only work on push mowers, and that's so 1970s. So while this is wild, and they couldn't believe the consistency of it, because that's one thing I really want to hit home, and I think really kind of comes through the story, is this isn't like one day a rock's thrown, and then 4 days go by, and then they hear a noise, and then a week goes by, and then they see a wrench swing, and then 2 weeks go by. It's like every day someone is seeing something swinging. Every day the rocks are getting thrown. Every day they're hearing the banging. Like, it is not like clockwork. You can't be like, at this time it always happens, or like 3 a.m., because they're not there. Who knows what's happening in this place at 3 a.m.?
There's full body apparitions of 3 a.m.
Guys, they don't know what time it is. But like, it is so consistent that you can't ignore it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is happening every day. But they decided to keep it a little hush-hush between them because I think they just had that moment where, like, do we want to freak out customers?
Yeah.
Like, is it possible for this to actually hurt our business?
And they don't want to look crazy either.
No.
Like, imagine the news, like, local lawn shop, crazy guys inside. I don't know if they'd phrase it quite like that.
Sponsored by other mower technician repair guys.
Sponsored by Ace.
Yeah. I mean, they got to pay them tea and biscuit bills. Like, you need customers.
How else are you going to get frogs and crumpets if, like, no one's coming in?
They don't just show up. At least, well, not yet, at least, that I know of. And also, and then there's the idea that, and I kind of want to present this to you. It gets brought back in a little bit, but I'm curious your thoughts. They're worried that it could hurt business, and if it brings in business, it wouldn't be the type of clientele that they would need. And I'm going to ask you this question, and I know you don't own a lawnmower repair shop.
I don't.
So it's hard to kind of pull from that well. But would you consider a business pivot change? And it's like, all right, no longer are we fixing lawnmowers. We are having people pay to come in and play catch with a ghost.
Well, here's the thing. I think he's making a good living with the lawnmower shop because he's got at least 3 or 4 employees.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
That's crazy to you?
Yes, it is.
Because we can't afford employees.
That's why, yeah.
Yeah, I see.
But he's got 3 or 4 employees. He's got a business. It's, I don't want to say thriving, but it's doing well enough.
I did have to let Timmy go. Layoffs happen, bro.
It happens. No one wanted Tim around. But
he always talked about politics.
But I think I don't think you'd pivot quite yet. I think you have to be more consistent.
It's like after a year.
If it was consistent for a year, yeah, I think maybe I don't know, a full pivot, but like you could let people come.
It could be an after hours.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually probably what I would do. I would do like 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, whatever your shop.
Yeah,
and then from like 7 to 10 is like the paranormal groups, right? Like in groups of like an hour.
Yeah,
like you either get a slot from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. Maybe I'd hire Tim for that because I'm not. I got family. I got to eat dinner. Maybe Tim. Do you want to come and host these?
Good news. We have another job for you.
He's just got like Band-Aids all over his face. He's like, they keep throwing rocks at me. So anyway, John and the guys decided to keep this on the down low business-wide, but they let the loose lips fly with their friends, and one by one their friends line up to see this rock throwing occur and to test it out for themselves.
Okay.
Similar to Ian's experience, one of their friends also witnessed the swinging and moving objects.
Okay.
So here's a quote from their friend Pat. Quote, "Well, John said to me, he said, 'You let me know if you see anything odd or, strange.' So I said, 'Right.' Well, the next thing, as he said that, I heard ping, ping. And John looked at me and he said, 'Well, that's the start of it.' Well, I said, 'What is it?' And he said, 'Believe it or not, it's stones.' And I said, 'Well, where's it coming from?' And he said, 'Well, come into the workshop and I'll show you.' I went in the garage and he pointed out a certain part of the workshop and it was up in the corner and he said, 'Pick up a stone and throw it.' Well, I picked up the stone and as I threw it, one came hurling straight back at me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he said, 'Look at the wall.' So I looked up at the wall and John had all these on a rack, all these different size spanners. And he said, 'Look at the spanners.' One spanner was swinging back and forth. Then another was swinging. And before I realized it, the whole lot was swinging back and forth. So I just started laughing and I said, 'John, we've got something strange in this place.' And he said, 'I know. That's what I've been telling you.'" Unquote.
That's crazy that he was able to predict all those things that were going to happen.
Yeah. Like that is the thing for me. It is the consistency.
Yeah.
Like that is the one thing you don't get in the paranormal. Hauntings, UFO sightings, cryptid sightings. It is so hard to replicate.
Yeah.
You can't be like, even when we get listener submissions, like we've had one where it's like, every night when I wake up, there's this thing dancing in my room. Or every night when I go down the stairs on the landing, there's this little girl. It's like, every night? Like, is this truly and I mean, you're not going to, when you're telling someone a story, you're not like most days or every other, you just say every night because to, get your point across. But like this story, it's like, man, I wish this took place like 20 years later with the technology.
Yeah.
I mean, in the 80s, you got VHS camera thing.
Yeah,
we just talked about this recently.
We did.
But, I wish that there was more footage. But we still wouldn't believe it. So
right.
It'd be on TikTok. It would be like
crazy though.
Fake.
That's just wild to me. Also, that conversation they had was just like, I know you read it in your regular voice.
Yeah. It
just still sounded the most British country accent, or the most British conversation I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, the whole law.
The whole law of it.
I'm not gonna lie, because I wasn't in the accent. One of the things is I couldn't believe what I was saying, and I said, "I say." That's literally in there. I was like, I can't. Yeah. I can't say "I say."
No,
it doesn't. It doesn't
work right.
Yeah. So it was in there though. So these guys are very British.
Yeah. Beans on toast.
So it didn't stop with the wrenches or the spanners, however you call it. Small carburetor floats, which are engine parts. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. Moved around on their own. One night, John wanted to test the entity, and as he was leaving the shop, he decided to place a float on a flat surface and challenge the spirit. Move it. And as he was locking up the garage, he felt a prick in his palm. He opened his hand to find it was the sharp end of the float that had materialized.
What?
We are going to get into things that kind of appear out of nowhere, and that was one of my questions at the top. It makes no sense to me. Like, is it coming from nowhere or is it taking it from other places? That's another thing to think about, right?
It is.
John also reported major swings in the temperature in mower services garage.
Okay, that's common.
Yeah, that's boring. He claimed, you don't need to do that now. We already got floating items and throwing rocks. You don't need to be like, it gets cold sometimes. Yeah, it's like, we already know you're haunted. Like, you don't need to do that shit. Like, we get it. But he said that sometimes it would be a normal temperature, and the next it'd be a very bone-chilling cold.
Okay.
And also he said there's a smell.
And everyone's like, duh, of course it gets cold.
It's haunted, bro. He said there's a smell, like an overpowering stench that would hang thick in the air and then dissipate.
Ooh, a stench?
I know you don't like that.
No, I don't like that. That's scary.
Yeah. So at this point, with the guys showing their friends everything, it was almost like a game to them. It became very playful. It felt like what was lurking around to them was a child. The way that it was playing with things is a little mischievous. So they affectionately decided to call this entity Pete. Thus, Pete the Poltergeist.
Also give you more and more energy.
Give me a name. Give me a backstory, bro. Come on, let's keep it going.
Where did it come from?
So it was very mischievous. It would hide people's belongings, continue tossing things around, play catch with friends, and throw objects, move the wrenches and such. John, Ian, and a friend agreed that Pete's favorite game was hiding people's things in the shop. The workers would look for it and look for it and look for it. And when they couldn't find it, they would eventually be like, Pete, I give up. I can't find it. And then almost immediately after doing that, their belongings would appear on the floor, like materializing out of nowhere, like places you already looked. But Pete's like, all right, I win.
That's crazy.
Here's the thing. Which makes you think like our apartment before, like when we lived together.
Oh,
how like there was like a book bag that appeared.
Book bag that
and a watch.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And then it appeared in the laundry room or something.
It's probably just Parker.
That was how
we never did the hand thing. That's what we should have done. But everyone put their hands down.
Yeah, no.
Except for us, it'd be like 5 weeks of like activities. Like, okay, guys, I really need to go to the bathroom.
You stay on this table.
I know. Then Parker's like, wait, you've been holding it? You guys don't know who Parker is. It doesn't matter. But pretty crazy. I would hate that, by the way. I hate when I don't know where something's at. Like if I misplace something, I hate that feeling. I need air tags for everything I own.
Dude, that just happened to me recently. Like Steph and I misplaced something, and then like we looked for like 20 minutes. And then like after like 20 minutes, I was like, okay, I give up. We really need it. Please give it back. Within like 2 minutes, we found it.
Start talking to Pete.
Talking to something.
Well, you probably believe it's a fae.
I wasn't going to get there yet. I don't want the discussion.
Okay. No, I don't mean Pete. I mean your story.
At my house?
Yeah, your house.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, we talk about different types of conspiracies all the time.
While some conspiracies are still looming,
looking at you, Hollow Earth.
One thing that's not a conspiracy is your online data being at risk.
Thankfully, just like the moon landing, that is in the past, thanks to Surfshark VPN.
Whether you're at your local cafe or you like to travel the world as a nomad, thanks to a dope work-from-home job #van life, Surfshark keeps you safe on all unknown public networks by encrypting your online data.
Surfshark even allows you to safely send or receive files by keeping your location and download history completely private.
Surfshark's VPN isn't just a glorified digital padlock, though.
That's right. Surfshark's VPN allows you to literally travel the world.
Okay, let's replace literally with virtually.
Oh, yeah. Good point. With Surfshark's VPN, you can virtually travel the world by connecting to popular websites that might be blocked in your country.
Exactly. And a great example is Netflix. It only offers certain films in particular countries, but with a VPN, you can secretly move your IP address up north a bit, and enjoy films like The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
What does Canada have to do with the Brendan Fraser vehicle?
I don't know. It says online you can only watch that in Canada.
Canada gets the best Brendan Fraser movies. Anyway, one of the creepiest aspects of conspiracy theories is the unknown factor.
Well, with Surfshark, you never have to worry about the unknown of whether your personal information has been breached.
With Surfshark Alert, your information is securely monitored, your identity is protected, and you are immediately notified if any funny business is going on.
So take action today. Secure your privacy with Surfshark.
Use coupon code BAZAAR for an extra 3 months free at surfshark.deals/bazaar today.
So there's one instance where John was working with a colleague, like they were sitting down having a discussion. John and Richard were sitting at his desk, and mid-conversation, out of nowhere, a paperclip fell onto his desk. Half jokingly, and just to kind of test the situation, Richard calls out, "Pete, I'd like a few more, please." A few moments later, a whole box of paperclips fell on the desk.
Wow.
Here's a quote from John. Quote, "There was an office upstairs above us, and one day a paperclip landed on the bench. So Richard picked it up and said, 'That's a bit mean, Pete. Have you got any more?' And with that, a whole box of paperclips landed on the fire. Bang! Never bounced, just bang. So we got to look at one another, and Richard said, 'What about some paper to go with it?' And down behind us floats a sheet of paper. And when we look at it, it's a stationary order. So I went and saw the chap upstairs, and I said, 'Is this yours?' And he says, 'It's my stationary order. I made it out this morning.' And I said, 'Are these your box of clips?' Well, he said, 'They're the same ones we use.' So where they came from and how they got from his office to my workshop, I have no idea." Unquote.
That's interesting.
Like, is it just holding it, waiting for these moments? Or it's like, is it a time thing? Like, time is different for the poltergeist. So in the time where you're like, I need this, it's like different. So they're able to like go get what they asked for and bring it back. And it feels like a span of seconds.
It's an interesting concept. I don't know.
What are you thinking about all this junk?
I'm thinking if it's something that can already play with dimensions, it's probably doing that to gather objects and just relocate them.
It just has a satchel. It's collecting items.
Well, maybe it just, in that moment, just moves him from one location to the other. Do like a mini wormhole or something.
Could be. Like it just reaches and his hand appears somewhere else and just grabs it. So at one point, there was reportedly a break-in at the workshop and the police were called. While the officers were on site, they're said to have witnessed Pete's mischievous activity for themselves.
Oh, wow.
They noticed a few things swinging and heard the noise of something, like a rock, being thrown. On another day, one witness worked in a shop 2 doors up the street. He'd heard about the local stories of this place as time went on, but was a bit skeptical. So while walking past, he threw a stone, which he picked up off the ground in their yard. And to his surprise, the stone didn't hit the metal door that he threw it at. Instead, and so he's expecting to hear this metallic clang, but it never made contact, even though he purposefully like directly threw it at it.
Yeah.
Instead, it came back at him and fell at his feet without making any sound apart from just touching the ground.
I was going to say homie missed. But
that means like it caught it.
Yeah.
Right? Or it had the ability to stop
it.
It's more fun to think that it caught it. And that means like it's like that creepy moment in a horror movie where you don't realize the entity's in front of you until it interacts with an object.
Yeah.
Like I think this is The Conjuring. There's a moment where they got like all the clothes hanging outside. And like she feels like something's around her. I think it's the mother. And the wind blows one of the sheets off and it catches a body frame standing right there.
Is that The Conjuring?
I think so.
It might be.
It's one of those early 2010s horror films. I want to say it's The Conjuring. Yeah. I don't think Insidious, they were putting their clothes outside like that.
And Conjuring makes sense. They're in the woods.
But and maybe she doesn't realize that. I can't remember. But it's like the wind catches it and it fills out that form.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't know it's there until that happens. And it's like this guy may not realize this entity was right there, threw it, and it's just like caught.
Yeah.
Just, ugh. There's another one. I don't know what movie this is. Could be The Haunting Connecticut or something like that. I don't remember. But there's a scene, or it could be one of the Insidiouses. I don't know. There's a scene where someone's making a bed, and when they go like this and they like flip the sheet of the bed up, you see feet standing on the bed.
Oh, I don't.
Do you remember that moment?
No, I don't.
You probably had your eyes covered.
Probably. Well, I've only ever seen the first Insidious.
Okay. I'm just wondering if it's Haunting Connecticut now that we just recently rewatched it.
I don't think so. I don't remember that moment.
Okay. I mean, somebody, if you know, it doesn't matter.
No.
But it just goes along the line of like something's there and you don't realize it until it gets interacted with. Obviously, that's like a jump scare in a film. But that happened here. Potentially real life. And that's creepy to me.
It's almost more like the one of those movies where the monsters are invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually the paranormal activity shifted from just the repair garage to John's home, which was right next door.
Oh, okay.
Objects would often appear from nowhere or be tossed from the shelves. One detail in particular that John noticed was that Pete seemed particularly fond of playing with children's toys.
Okay.
Especially John's Rubik's Cube. And now I would assume they have kids if they have toys. That's not stated. Maybe John just liked collecting children's toys, but...
I would assume there were kids, but I don't know. I guess they didn't talk about them. I don't know.
His wife's like, we have to talk about your doll collection. Like your action figures. And one thing we've already kind of hinted at or discussed in detail, like the paperclip experience, is an anomaly that Pete became known for making objects materialize out of thin air.
Okay.
One morning, at home, John asked his wife for a banana, and before she even had time to respond to what he'd said, a banana would plop down in front of him.
He did that on purpose. He knew that banana was going to show up.
I know. But like when they say plop down in front of him, do you see it materialize or does it come from above you? And if it comes from above you, if you're looking up, what do you see? These are the questions I have, John.
Here's the thing. If you were looking up, it would just be in front of you. It wouldn't fall down.
It's like not spawning. What is it called? In a video game.
Spawn?
It is spawning in a video game. Rendering.
Oh, okay.
It's like when you turn around in a video game, you just trust that everything is still there behind you, but the game doesn't load what's behind you until you turn and look at it, right? Which kills kind of the world building mindset of a video game. And maybe newer games do this. I know, like GTA San Andreas is that way. It's like if you turn around, what's behind you is not behind you, until you turn. Like it's not always there. So I like that idea of like it's not there until you're looking at it, kind of. Where it's like if you're looking up, it'll be there. If you're looking down, it's gonna fall.
That's a really good way to put that. I think that's a really good way to put that.
I don't know why that's so creepy. And it wasn't just bananas, spoons, forks, napkins, anything you need in the house. However, apparently, Pete hated oranges.
What?
He said, oranges. Whenever John or his wife would try keeping them in the house, they'd be thrown out the window within a few hours. No oranges.
That's so weird.
He probably doesn't like, you got to work for an orange. Like a banana, oranges. You got to open up. I understand that. But like orange, you got to get the thumb in there. It's like a whole to do.
I don't use thumbs. I use a spoon and I get it open real quick.
Well, when you don't got a spoon, you got to use your thumb.
I guess.
You got to thumb it. So this whole request and like get your things became really useful for the guys at the shop. Because if they needed a tool, like, small, like a wrench or a screwdriver, they would just call it out and it would be dropped in front of them. The replacing Tim thing was kind of a joke.
Kind of.
I mean, they like get him some ectoplasm.
They do have like a part-time employment.
Deposit. You know? Here's a quote from Fred, who again is John's brother-in-law who worked at the garage. Quote, over the years that we were there, playing because we used to play with it, and we found that it was very intelligent. If you wanted a plug, we would say a plug, an electric plug, that you'd plug an iron in with or something. But he would throw you a spark plug. In other words, he would associate plug as being a spark plug. And he was amazing. He'd throw you anything you asked for, really. You'd say something like, you must make note of this, and he'd throw you a pen. Silly things like, stop messing around, Pete. We've got to get this together. And he'd throw you a staple. This sort of thing he would associate with what we were speaking. It was so good. I said, my Pete, you're so clever. There's one thing you can't do or get from me. And I said, and that's a Rolls Royce. And as I said that, at my feet, and John was my witness, a Rolls Royce keyring landed at my feet with an RR on it. Amazing. Unquote.
Crazy.
So, for instance, the banana, you would assume it's already in the house.
Yeah.
The screwdrivers, the wrench, the stones, things already. Well, I guess I don't know about the stones.
They're all over.
I feel like if you own a shop, you got some rocks in there.
Yeah.
He's saying you're not a key, but a keychain. Key ring. A Rolls Royce key ring landed at his feet.
Where'd that come from?
That's pulling from elsewhere. There's some very privileged gentleman who might have worked very hard for his money, but let's just call, or woman, somebody who's very privileged, who has a Rolls Royce, perhaps an orange one, who used to play for the Cleveland Browns with his New York Giants catch. They don't know where their key ring is anymore. Like, that's the thing. Did it create it from scratch?
Yeah.
Or did it take it from elsewhere?
I think it took it from somewhere.
Someone's missing their key ring. Maybe that's, listen, new theory. It's not all about us. If you lose something, it's not because you lost it, and something might not necessarily be playing a prank on you. It could be borrowing it for someone else's paranormal encounter.
I think there's actually, I don't know if you're kidding or not, but I think there's actually some merit in that.
I mean, I was being a little theatrical.
Yeah. I do think there could be an idea behind there, though.
Like when you lost your AirPods, it's because somebody somewhere else needed AirPods.
And then they looked at mine, they're like, I don't want these.
You're like, yeah, no. He's like, come on. Come on, Petey. They threw him back.
Interesting.
But that's like the first instance of something you wouldn't expect to even exist in this location up here.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Now that you kind of see, more about Pete, the paranormal events happening, and they're playing this new asking for things game, and that it can materialize. What's something you would ask for, Charlie?
Oh, something I can ask for is something small. Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't have to be small.
I don't know. What I ask for?
The thing about it, I have an answer I'm trying to fish you to get to. If you had an entity that you could ask for anything and they could give it to you in this world, this day and age, what would you ask for?
A new computer?
Do you need a new computer?
Like a laptop.
What could you use to get a new computer?
Money?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Moolah.
Okay.
Yeah, John was thinking, hey, what if we asked Pete for some money? Give us that dough.
Where's our rent?
Yeah, Pete, come on. You live in here rent-free?
Exactly.
Here's a quote from John. Quote, every day, and this went on for 5 years, almost every day, one period of time, you could ask for money. Just give us money, Pete. And pennies. 2 pence pieces, 5 pence pieces, a pound of coins on occasions used to come. Never 50 pence. I don't know why. Mainly pennies, 2 pennies, and in an hour, we collected 68 pence in an hour, just saying, send me some more money, send me some more money. And he would appear from nowhere, just dropping around you in different parts of the workshop. On average, we'd be getting about £5 a month, pound coins. And that's average, mind. Sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be less. I remember once I was drinking a cup of tea after washing the dishes. I'm looking out the window, and there's a pound coin in the cup. Plop. And the noise in my cup, my wife said, what's that? And I said, we're rich again. Unquote. I got to say, if we were getting pennies, it would be so annoying. I'd be like, just keep them, pennies. Just keep them, Pete. And not to turn around money, and I'm in a good enough spot where if a ghost was dropping pennies every couple hours, I'd be like, this is actually a little bit more of a nuisance.
I still have some pences from when I was in Scotland.
Yeah.
They look different.
Ghost pences?
Yeah, they're ghost pences. A pence.
This ghost is basically acorn. It's like, you want me to round up?
Yeah.
Fine.
It's interesting. It's weird, though.
Now, if they were dropping $5 bills or even $1, like dropping dollars, it'd be kind of like, okay.
Yeah. Well,
but so the theory again, is it stealing money from someone else or on the street? I mean, there are places where money is just like lying, So, there's like that older person who's got like a whole bunch of cash under their bed and they don't check it for years. They're like, I know it's there. And Pete's just like slowly withdrawing it. And then eventually this person looks under it. It's all gone.
My life savings. Well, there's also like take a penny things from like stores or whatever too.
Pete just made note of that. Like, okay, Myers, the local Aldi.
But like, I wonder if it's almost like leprechaun gold. Like it's there for a couple hours and then it's gone again. Maybe,
because it could just be misplaced.
Yeah.
Or even worse, it looks right, but you go to a vending machine, you put it just slides right through and comes back out.
Yeah.
And you're like, God damn it. Yeah. It's like when you try to use a Canadian quarter.
Yeah. It's like
or the Canadian coin. It looks about right, but the machine's just like,
it's like foreign.
Nerp. I'd ask for a Super Bowl trophy.
Or a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, but even Pete's like, damn, man. Like, that's too much for even for me.
All right. Really weird off-topic question. If you could have a Super Bowl ring from any Super Bowl, what would you have?
I have no interest at this point.
Really?
We weren't there. I wouldn't want to wear another team's Super Bowl.
You wouldn't?
Would you?
They're kind of cool.
Yeah, but like someone's like, where'd you get that ring? Well, it's not mine. I had nothing to do with it. And it's not even my team.
Well, yeah.
And it's actually really heavy. And you don't even like wearing rings.
I don't. I would display it.
You just put it up. Put it in the studio.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, sorry. Off topic.
Here's the 2015 Denver Broncos one.
The ring from the Chargers is really cool. Like, if you open the ring up.
The Chargers?
Rams.
Rams, okay.
The stadium is inside of the ring.
I would get a Cleveland Cavaliers ring.
Oh, it makes more sense.
I'd much rather have that. So, as things kept growing and growing, John decided to bring in an outside expert source to kind of acknowledge all this stuff happening. And he ended up calling David Fontana, a university professor with a little skin in the paranormal game. And by that, I mean he was at least interested in the paranormal. He was not an expert.
Okay.
He was like, I teach at university, and I'm interested in the paranormal. So he's going to come investigate.
Sure, yeah.
Not everyone needs a sci-fi or a Travel Channel or History Show, to go and do this stuff.
That's true. Like that dude from Harvard, John Mack, I think, from that last episode.
Yeah.
He was just a teacher. If
you teach, you can investigate paranormal. If you write a book, you can be a ufologist. These are just the pathways, You don't have to go to college, y'all. You have to teach at college, but you don't got to go to college. But you probably have to go to a college to teach at college. So anyway, here's a quote from David Fontana. Quote, most of my visits were unannounced, so they didn't know I was coming at any particular time. As I entered the workshop, at that very moment, a stone was thrown across the room and bounced off a piece of machinery. John was sitting there talking to one of the sales representatives, but there was no question that either of them was involved in this. John just looked up at me and said, there, see what I mean? He's greeting you. I think I was very pleased, actually, because it's so rare for investigators to be there when things actually happen. That made me take things much more seriously than perhaps I otherwise would. You don't see things in midair. You hear them hit the wall and clatter to the ground. You look around and the stone is there, but you didn't actually see it in flight. Which, in the sense rather strengthens the idea that nobody's playing tricks, because if they were, you would see the things in flight, unquote. Very astute observations there.
Yeah.
If somebody was throwing them, you would see probably the person throwing them, according to my theory.
Nailed it.
So therefore, he's like, yeah, I wasn't going to take this shit seriously, but, something happened the first 5 minutes. I wasn't bored. I was like, all right, I guess I'll dial in.
He's kind of giving that attitude.
I'll be honest, he's keeping it very real. Because, we can say that and look down on it, but honestly, if we, went somewhere and investigated, and we were there for, 3 hours and nothing happened, we'd be like,
this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's keeping it real. So now that they officially brought in outside sourcing, who's able to make their own remarks and media comments.
There are a lot of witnesses, too, to this story.
Yeah. Friends, the workers, outside people, the
police,
cops.
Yeah.
So the news of Pete the Poltergeist started hitting the news and spreading. And like we were saying before, while they were initially afraid of driving customers away, it was actually the opposite, like our hypothesis.
Yeah.
Droves of curious folks found their way to John's garage in hopes of catching a moment of the peculiar entity. And let me tell you, Pete was many things, but he was not shy. Customers left dazzled and particularly enthralled with the stone-throwing games, which is another reason why I wish this happened now.
Yeah. That's like the thing. That's why you go to haunted locations. Like, you kind of want to see it. Like,
yeah.
That's why people go to Bobby Mackey's Music World.
Right. It's either you want to see it because it's exciting or you want to disprove it.
Right.
And that's it. John made sure not to mention anything about the money, though. I assume.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all these customers like, hey, give us everything in the cash register. I was like, wait.
No, please.
There's a cash register goes flying across the room, decks the dude in the head. Eventually, 2 priests from a nearby church heard of this Pete business and decided to check it out for themselves. Here's a quote from one of the priests. Quote, "When I was there, I heard the stones or noises coming from the back of the shop. When I asked what it was about, I was told, oh, that's just Pete, the poltergeist. And I didn't really believe them. So I opened the door and I looked through and I could see a stone whizzing around on the floor. And there was nobody else there." Unquote. So these tricks, these games with Pete went on for years, like a decade. Like consistent, nonstop, clock in, clock out. It was very crazy, which is why, the top, like, this is considered one of the most prolific, hauntings or poltergeist activities.
It's crazy that it is so consistent. You said it earlier, but it's true. It's just consistently for a decade, every day, some bullshit's going on.
I know. At first, it's like cool, and then you're like, I really don't. I don't want to keep putting up with this.
Can there not be stones today?
But they are getting money, so it's like it is kind of dope.
Yeah,
very passive income. So one thing that stood out amongst visitors and guests and everyone around was that yes, they could attribute what was happening to some playful, mischievous entity, but why hadn't anyone seen this entity, and was it possible to see Pete the Poltergeist?
I was going to say maybe he doesn't have a corporeal shape.
Well, this question was answered by John's brother-in-law, Fred, because he was the only person who ever claimed to see Pete in an actual form.
Okay.
And here's a quote from Fred. "I'd never been frightened until then. I looked up, and there he was on a shelf. He was a little boy dressed in 1940s clothes, and no figure, no face, and you could see the outline of his hands, his face, and yet you couldn't put a face to him. You can imagine he was all gray. No face, but the face was there. It's really hard to explain. But he was sat on sort of a fixture where we kept spare parts for lawnmowers. Now, he looked out of proportion to me. His body compared to his size. His head should have been in the ceiling. It's hard to explain, but he looked really out of proportion. Now, this happened several times. I should say 4 or 5 times I've seen Pete the Poltergeist." Unquote.
That's really weird. I thought it was going to be like, it looks like this guy, Tim, that we used to have employed here.
And he mysteriously disappeared?
Yeah. That's weird, though. I want...
Like, we don't have to pay unemployment.
Weirdly proportioned, right?
Yeah, like, basically, the way he was crouched, it was up high, and he was saying the way you would normally expect the body frame to be, that the head would have been through the ceiling. Because
but it wasn't.
So it makes it seem like the head was small and bigger body?
I don't even know. Or the body was smaller.
It makes sense to a certain degree, because like when you see something like this, it is hard to process and explain because you can't fully grasp.
Face but no face does not make sense to me.
Like your body registered that it was there, but you can't explain what you saw.
Yeah.
I guess.
So like face but no face feels like to me like, this is going to sound very creepy, but like faceless thing, but like indents of where things would
like
be.
Like a nose, like you see this, like the sockets, like.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean.
And that's terrifying.
It is pretty creepy. The part's pretty creepy. So Fred and John reached out to Professor Fontana again to see if he had any information that could confirm or deny what Fred claimed he saw in terms of the history of their location. So according to Fontana's research, there were rumors that a young boy was killed on a road nearby, so they got to thinking that maybe this boy was the one haunting the garage. And before long, they believe that the rumor was confirmed when the boy's older sister came forward after reading about the case in the local paper. So she's basically like, yeah, that story's true. My brother did die right here. Now, they can't be like, let me see his face. Well, he didn't really have a face. Did your brother have a face?
It's terrible.
Was he a little gray? Was his head unusually small?
Yeah. Was he weirdly proportioned?
So they're not saying connecting the dots like, I saw him, that was definitely him. It's like, we're seeing a little boy. Apparently a little boy died right around here, around that right age. And then the sister came forward and was like, yep, it happened.
He did. Okay.
Yeah. Somehow, Fred seeing Pete, Poltergeist, just Fred, changed the dynamic of things a little bit. After this experience, Fred claimed that Pete became a bit obsessive with him, following him around everywhere. And most of Pete's tricks and energy and rock throwing was mostly focused on Fred at this point, too.
Did other people say that, too, or is it just Fred who's saying that?
Fred and other people.
So other people confirmed that.
Well, let me put it this way. Fred seemed like things were intensifying around him. Mm-hmm. Everyone else was noticing that things were fading at the shop.
Okay.
So it wasn't like they were saying it was all around Fred. Fred's saying it's more focused on me. Everyone else at this point is witnessing that the occurrences are dwindling at the shop.
Okay.
So they're seeing less of him. Fred is seeing more of him.
I got that. So do you think like, oh man, I got a couple ideas here.
Well, we're almost to the discussion.
All right.
So it became overwhelming for Fred, and him and his wife ended up leaving.
Okay.
Like they left. They were like, we're out. I'll go to a different lawnmower.
Yeah. Was that just his friend or his brother?
Brother-in-law.
Okay. So his sister. Okay.
So once Fred left, it seemed as though he took the energy away from Peter. The paranormal activity faded until John and his coworkers never experienced anything at all. And this ended a 14-year run of paranormal experiences.
Wow.
And apparently, there have been no reported occurrences in the area since.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
And that is the story. That is our coverage of Pete, the Poltergeist. I know you have a lot of thoughts.
I'm so excited to the discussion.
I'm curious on your thoughts and to see what you think about that. So let's do it. All right, before we get to the discussion, we'd like to stop the episode and thank our newest patrons who, as of the recording of this episode, include Amanda, Loser, we don't think you're a loser though, Elizabeth, Tess, Nicholas, and Derek. I feel like the way I say it is like a game show host. Like, come on down,
I do
loser.
Too. I feel the same way too.
Tess, Elizabeth, and Nicholas.
I'm glad
you're
here.
Or it could be like, well, I don't want to say what these people are weighing. I'm thinking like wrestlers.
Yeah, that's not nice.
But thank you all so much for joining. There's so much on Patreon, so much going on behind the scenes, keeping us up at night, but with smiles on our faces.
Absolutely.
We love talking about it. Charlie, what is one thing from our Patreon that you'd like to highlight for new listeners, our new patrons, and people considering the Patreon?
So something that I want to highlight is it's a lot of people's like favorite segment on Patreon. It's called Do You Believe the Bizarre? And it's a game hosted by our good friend, producer Ben, who writes a story and finds two other stories, and there's 3 rounds. And we play a game and see if we can figure out which one Ben wrote. It's got just some of the, 1, scariest stories you're going to hear, and 2, some of this great banter. If you like the banter, it's where the banter is.
And it's fun because even if you like, there's the playing along aspect. Obviously, Charlie's trying to beat me, I'm trying to beat him, and we want to guess which one is fake. Fake being the one that Ben wrote. But regardless, every episode you come away with hearing 9 good creepy stories.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of fun. What I want to highlight is what Ben and I just did last night, very, very late, is horror movie review. We watched Netflix movies with our dedicated and our not tier, which is basically like we put a poll out, y'all vote, and then we get together and we watch this movie in sync with everyone who joins, and we can chat about it in real time on chat. So that's one thing. But another thing we do, because I love horror movies, I want to keep watching horror movies. Sometimes I'm like, I don't have time for this because you got to do things for the podcast. Well, when you make it about the podcast, you got to do it. So this forces me to keep watching horror movies. We watched Deliver Us, which was not the movie I thought it was. I'll be very, very frank. I thought it was The Exorcist Believe or Believers, whatever it was. So I was a little disappointed at first. when it came out. But we watched that, and we have all the thoughts on that. We've watched Night Swim. We watched The Evil Dead. We watched a bunch of the new Scream movies.
And, honestly, I'm not typically part of this.
You watched Oculus with us, and you watched the Alien movie. I did. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to save.
No one can save you.
No one can save you. So if
I don't typically listen, I don't watch the scary ones, though.
Yeah.
I'm a coward.
But it's a lot of fun. If you're interested in hearing our thoughts on horror movies, or if you have ones you'd like to recommend that we do watch, hit us up. But there's so much stuff. There's quizzes, there's games, hangouts, watch movies together. You get merch, shirts, hoodies, enamel pins. The 2024 Not Tier enamel pin is out now. So there's so much stuff over on Patreon. It really helps us support the podcast. It helps us in many ways. So we appreciate all of you that are supporting us on Patreon, and we hope you're continuing to enjoy the content. With that said, let's get back to the discussion. All right. So I got 2 minutes. I want you to unload all your thoughts, and you don't have to answer these 2 right away. I want to get these out there to help structure the discussion. But I just want you to kind of let it out.
Okay.
So again, I told you at the top. Do you think this is a poltergeist, or do you think this is a ghost or something else?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, is there any way this isn't a paranormal entity? Those are kind of the 2. But you've been holding in your thoughts. What do you got?
Yeah.
What do you got
okay.
for me?
So I got a couple ideas.
Yes.
If this is an entity, some kind of ghost, right? I don't know if it is a ghost. It might be some kind of evil spirit.
You think evil?
I do, just because, right? As soon as someone sees it, it focuses on them. It attaches that energy there. It builds off, feeding off, not fear per se, but feeding off attention.
Yeah, but that just sounds just like a child.
I don't know.
And the sight thing sounds like imprinting.
I don't know about imprint. I don't know. That's kind of
You know
scary.
what I mean? Like a little duck.
A little duck with no face?
Well, this is an entity. It's a paranormal entity.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because it was seen and there was that new connection, it's not like you're my mom now, but all right, we have that connection, Fred. It's a child in a world it probably doesn't fully understand.
Okay. I get that.
That's my rebuttal. Obviously, I have no idea. You could be completely right.
I don't know. I have a hard time trusting any child spirit.
14 years of this without anything truly terrible happening doesn't seem evil to me, though.
It could be a long build up.
I feel like they're trying long build up. It's gonna pay off in 25 years. Fred's having a really bad time right now. Maybe it's I feel like they're trying to lean more the mischievous, the childlike.
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely see it. I'm just so wary of any child spirit. I just don't trust it.
I think it's because in your heart and your soul, it's terrible when a child passes. So you don't want to think about children passing. You want to think about them being demonic.
That's not what it is. It's
deep down in your heart. That's what it is.
It's a good cover.
Do you saying you like children dying, Charlie? I think that's kind of what you said right there.
That's not what I meant to say. I feel like you are inserting words into my mouth now. That's okay.
I don't know.
I just think that it's a really good cover for anything evil
it
to
lets
wear.
Guards
it's a
down.
good disguise. It's such a good disguise. I think it's too good.
Okay, that kind of leads into the first question.
Yeah.
Do you think this is even a poltergeist? I feel like they're going for the alliteration there.
I don't think it's a poltergeist. I don't, because typically poltergeists come from, a lot of the time there are girls in the house, and it comes from them maturing. It comes from energy of maturing and the angst that comes with that.
It's also a collection of energy too, right? This thing, it doesn't seem like, unless they've just been really stressing at this shop.
Yeah, it's like 3 dudes, right, in a shop. That's not where a poltergeist comes from. That was another point I was going to say. Why did this thing start to haunt them now? Out of nowhere. I don't get that.
Also, it was outside, and then it came inside.
Yeah.
At first it started with hitting the outside with the rocks. And then they opened the door.
I think in some way they did invite it in. Without meaning to. I think they did invite it in somehow.
It is weird to think I'd be interested in how soon, because they found out years after about the boy that passed, but how soon after the boy passed did these things start?
Yeah.
But they said he looked like he was dressed in the 40s, so it's not like it was a recent. It's not like
40
it's not like
years
the
at
kid
least.
passed away and then an hour later, or a week later, they were having these
That
experiences.
would make more sense, though.
See, this to me feels more like a haunting than a poltergeist.
Can I levy this without you just completely shutting it down? What about some kind of spirit energy, or not spirit, nature energy?
Nature energy
wasn't necessarily. I'm not going to necessarily say fae, but some kind of thing that's not human.
What makes you think it's that rather than a spirit haunting it?
Well, you said it, mischievous. It was so mischievous. It seemed like it was just playing tricks. It didn't seem necessarily evil. You know, it did take the energy that they were giving it. It took things from them.
They didn't realize every time they asked for something, it was a bartering. And he's just like, look, he's got like a little like checklist. He's like, all right.
Yeah.
All right, John owes me about 542 gifts.
That's why Fred, he was so focused on Fred because he owed him the most gifts. And they didn't really play with food or anything, so that's okay.
Not that we heard of.
The
Rolls Royce, though, like Jesus.
That's another thing. Those things that maybe don't seem like they could have come from somewhere inside the shop, maybe those are things that disappear because they're not real. Like, I don't know if he still has that Rolls Royce tag, but maybe it vanished. I mean, that's speculation.
For some reason, I find that easier to believe. Like, it was either never really there. But, I mean, there's the idea of it being like a portal, and it's just pulling from other things or things it's collected.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's a poltergeist, though.
I agree with you there. Whether or not we land on it being a spirit or a haunting, and that's not saying whether or not we believe the story. It's just like trying to identify the entity. I don't think it's a poltergeist either. I think it was just easy to say, Pete the poltergeist, you know?
Yeah.
It's also known as the Cardiff poltergeist.
They more commonly label things as poltergeists in the England and UK.
Yes, yeah.
Which I think is just
you got something spooky going on?
Yeah. Like the Enfield poltergeist. I don't think that's a poltergeist either. But when we get to that story, I don't think that's going to be that either. Yeah, so I guess what do you think about that?
About it being an energy spirit? I don't know. Most of my energy is going into thinking that it's not a poltergeist. It's like if I believe that this boy passed away and it was her brother, then it felt more like a traditional haunt. Not traditional actually, because it's, you know, very different in some ways. But it felt more like this little boy is haunting this home.
Yeah, I just don't know where it came from, I guess.
The arrival of it and the fact that it stayed for 14 years, which like we were talking about, like when it grabs things, the time, like who knows what 14 years felt like to this thing. Like it might have felt like 5 minutes. Yeah. I don't know. But also like the fact that it can leave and like follow people. It's a little creepy.
Yeah, it's weird too.
I think I would need to know more about like, and this isn't on you, but I feel like it would need to be like present a spirit or like an energy spirit and like that has characteristics of what we're experiencing.
I mean, typically, right, like hauntings are tied to places, so it wouldn't follow people unless there's an attachment or something, which it seemed like it did have for Fred for some reason.
Yeah. And they assume it's because he saw it, but I don't know.
Very I really creepy. Hate the description. I don't like that description at all.
So on our scale of believable to viable to skeptical to unbelievable, and again, you don't have to be like, don't worry so much about what the entity is. It's did this occur? Did these paranormal experiences happen? The wrenches, the rocks, all the different sightings, making a banana appear, making money appear.
Yeah. Well, going back to the other question, like, could this have been fate? I don't know how it could have been. So that's why I'm going to go with at least, I'm going to go with what I just said. I'm going to go believable.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we have outside sources.
So many
people
sources.
There.
Yeah.
We got the professor / paranormal investigator, priests, police officers, friends and family.
People that are going shopping there.
I mean, it was almost so consistent that and they were so confident and cocky about it that you'd almost feel like it would be like there's only so many sure things in life. Like when it comes to sports, for instance.
Yeah.
Like you can joke about it, but like even me, maybe it's because I'm a Cleveland fan, people in like Golden State and you know, they might not feel this way. But even if I'm like, oh, we got this game, there's still like that. You can't be sure of things or like your career.
Especially as a Browns fan.
Your career, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to be here for 30 years. Like there's so many things it's hard to be completely certain about.
Yeah.
But when people came to visit the shop, just like, oh yeah, just wait around for, oh yeah, that's him. He's greeting you. It's like, it almost has that feeling of like, could it be set up because they're so confident?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to look like an idiot. And be like, oh, he's going to come around and then he doesn't show up and you feel like, like they were so certain that he was going to be there.
And it seemed like it never let them down either, too.
Never. So I could see why some people might think it was a setup because it was just so consistent and a guarantee. It was a guaranteed paranormal phenomenon.
Paranormal.
Panera bread. So because of all the witnesses and it wasn't like unbelievable things happened.
Right.
But like it wasn't
outrageous or anything.
It wasn't outrageous. Even though like the money appearing out of nowhere in a banana, like if that happened to me, I would say that was outrageous.
It wasn't a lot of money though. It was like 50 cents.
Yeah, well,
not 50 cents specifically, but like pennies.
Yeah. I'm going to ride with you, though. I think it's believable. I think this happened. I don't know what it was, but I think it went down. So that is our episode on Pete the Not Poltergeist. We
Absolutely not.
appreciate you listening. This is fun. I'm having fun. Are you having fun, Charlie?
I always have fun recording.
It's a good time. Sometimes I get stressed. It's like before you start something and you're nervous and you feel it in your tummy. And you're like, is this going to be good? Or it's like, do I want to? You know, sometimes you're like, oh, man, sometimes I just want to chill. But then you get in there and you hit record and you start talking and it's just like, it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as we are. We see you out there and we appreciate you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, there's a couple things you can do. If you're on Apple, you can leave a 5-star rating and you can leave a comment that kind of overarches the podcast, like a one-time comment. If you're listening on Spotify, lucky you can comment on every single specific episode. And you know what? I got some from our last episode if you want to hear.
Sure, yeah.
These are comments left specifically on our last episode, which was the Rua Aerial School UFO incident. William says, great show. You guys are awesome. Sophie, who's not anonymous. This isn't us anonymizing her. This is her name.
That's her actual name.
Sophie, or with Sophia. That's what we do.
Sophia.
Sophie says, great episode. This is a classic of UFO stories. So glad to hear you cover it. And Emma says, I caught up on all the episodes. Only took a year. I must like this or something. Shrug emoji. We appreciate you. A lot of you let us know that you heard it elsewhere.
That's
and let
true.
me just tell you, you'll probably hear many of the things. It's kind of like
it's bound to happen.
It's like a fishing well. You throw your line in, and if you're a paranormal podcast, it's like today's Roswell, and you put it down, and tomorrow's the Wendigo.
It's funny we've never done Roswell.
Yeah, we did do Wendigo though.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes we don't do the big ones, because we do try to do ones that maybe you haven't heard on other podcasts.
Yeah.
There will be overlap though.
It happens.
And we never time it with any other podcast.
No.
It is always coincidental.
Because the one had just done it also, and I was like, well, that's inconvenient.
But it's like you get to compare the stories.
Yeah.
But yes, if you like the podcast and you're listening on any of those devices, and there's some other devices or platforms you could listen on, but leave us the comments, leave us the reviews. We love them, and I want to make it a point to start shouting them out more.
Yeah.
If you're going to take the time to leave them, we want to talk about them.
And if you are really liking the show and you've left a comment, we appreciate you so much. But if you want to join us on Patreon, we would also like to see you there. There's a lot of things that go on, and there's a lot of ways to engage with us on Patreon as well. And we'd love for you to join the community.
Absolutely. We got 4 tiers. Every different tier helps us out in different ways, and you get different types of bonus content in all of them. Obviously, the not tier, you get everything. You get a hoodie, t-shirt, you get the enamel pin, but we appreciate everyone supporting us over there. But also, we appreciate you right now listening to this podcast. Otherwise, we'd be just 2 dudes talking into microphones to each other when we could do this at a coffee shop.
That's true.
But we appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast that would never be skilled enough to work on lawnmowers. As always, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre.
A podcast as bizarre as you are.